Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ICG's Digital Academy webinar series. I'm Sally Alsop, the ICG committee member responsible for our webinar programme. So for today's webinar, we're delighted to welcome ICG members Dan Young and Daniel Parker-Smith. Dan Young runs Shed Research and helps insight teams do more with their existing research, either by synthesizing their insight or by training them to do it themselves. In 2020, he was the proud winner of the Aura Agency Speaker and MRS ICG Independent Consultants Awards. Dan Parker-Smith runs The Word Is Out, a specialist in producing videos for the market research sector. With a research background, Dan's approach delivers inspiring insight through video and collaborates with agencies to bring video to their projects. Dan and Daniel will be telling us about how they used insight synthesis and video animation to build a powerful story of what the cost of living meant for HSBC UK and its customers. Their hard-hitting video was shown throughout the bank, and the 6 things you need to know they identified became the foundation of the bank's cost of living response. The webinar will also include a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions and would rather I read them out for you, then please type them in the chat box. Otherwise, just turn on your webcam and raise your hand. So the webinar is generously sponsored by Qualsy. The platform supports all your asynchronous project needs, including diary tasks, UX research, video blogging, international projects, long-term communities, and much, much more. Click the QR code or follow the link to claim your exclusive ICG discount. And Qualsy are passionate about quality insight and love working with quality researchers. They look forward to making friends with more ICG members and helping you to deliver more for your clients. So before we begin, here are some more events we've got planned for you over the coming weeks and at the beginning of next year. Don't forget that we're able to offer great value sponsorship opportunities with each of our webinars and online events. Just contact Lucy if you'd like to know anything more. And so now I will hand over to our 2 Dans.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Thank you for having us. Just while Dan shares his slides, we had a few technical issues this morning, which we've ironed out. So Dan's going to be doing the driving. I'll be doing a lot of the talking, but Dan's going to come in and explain a bit about this video that we produce. So, as Sally said, so this is a project that we did for HSBC. It was all about the cost of living, hence the title, Squeezed. So we did a big piece of insight synthesis. We turned it into a video, and it really our aim was to really land something with the organisation to really sort of reach the various nooks and cranny of a very large organisation. We were inspired by Netflix in our approach, and Dan will explain a bit about the approach we took with the video. But our focus is really trying to inspire stakeholders as we were inspired by Netflix, and hopefully today will give you a little bit of inspiration as well to maybe try something like this yourself. So I think we're probably going to talk for about 30 minutes. And then plenty of time for questions at the end. Look forward to hearing your I'm sure, very thoughtful and considered questions. So Dan, could we skip on a slide?
Oh, I think you went off then, Dan.
Did I go? Oh, sorry.
Just a sec. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll move it on a slide.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. That's what I said. Yeah. Sorry.
All right. Okay. Here we go.
Oh, thank you. So as Sally said, so I run Shed Research. So my focus is on insight synthesis. So it gets called assimilation, triangulation, curation, lots of different things. But effectively, I always say, in plain English, it's helping organizations make more of their existing insight, their existing research. So working for lots of different organizations, very fortunate to have been recognized for the work that we're doing. And it's gaining a lot of traction with clients at the moment who sit on large bodies of research, large bodies of evidence, and they sometimes need help to sift through it and find the insight and elevate the insight. I think it's probably fair to say that as we're going to be talking about HSBC, you all know about HSBC, you're aware of its presence, you're aware of what kind of organisation it is. So we won't do an intro slides for HSBC, if that's okay. And I'll just pass over to Dan, who can just introduce his company, The Word Is Out.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So basically, The Word Is Out, I kind of work with both end clients and agencies to deliver insight via video. Before going independent, I used to work as a researcher. So I find agencies often come to me for my experience in understanding what clients are looking for from a film deliverable, rather than going to an independent video production company who don't really understand the sector so much. I work in quite a broad range of projects, but essentially, if it needs video, I can do it. I also recently co-founded a collective called Explainers with 2 other ICG members, which is very much in that vein of distilling insight into film deliverables. Like Dan, I've also worked with Futures Housing Group and was an MRS finalist in between the years that Dan was a winner. But so when he put the call out in the ICG, I thought it was a perfect fit, basically. I'll go on to the next slide.
Brilliant, thank you. And we'll talk about the call out. Dan's got a slide on exactly that later, and I guess the power of the ICG and the collective. So do you mind just skipping on the sort of animations there?
Oh.
Just do all of them. Thank you. So for this project, so as I said, we're looking at the cost of living. We're looking to bring it to life for HSBC. They faced and we faced 4, which may be familiar challenges to you. So we were dealing with a massive topic. So I think it's fair to say the cost of living, inflation's kind of exercised the whole research world for a couple of years now. Before that, it was COVID doing the same, but it's been a big topic, which means lots and lots of research. And there's a huge amount out. There's a huge amount within organizations. There's a huge amount of published research as well. So I guess the challenge here is bringing it together into something coherent, something that people can really understand. We wanted to really engage our stakeholders. So as you can imagine, stakeholders in any company, they're bombarded by PowerPoint reports. They're seeing a lot of the same things that you see. We wanted something to really cut through. We wanted something that really had impact as well. So we wanted to use video in this case, just to blend qualitative research, quantitative research, real life stories, to animate some of the data as well, just to really bring it to life. So we'll walk through each of these challenges as the kind of structure of today and how we overcame each of these challenges and how we delivered, I think, something really brilliant for HSBC. Can we skip on that? Thank you. So the first challenge, so if you cast your mind back to when we did this at the end of last year, cost of living, it was kind of, I guess it was probably peaking at that time, driven by interest rates, but also energy costs at that time. And, very quickly, it became a major focus for the bank, and the insight team were fielding a huge number of questions, but they were all the same questions. They were basically, what does the cost of living, what does inflation mean for our customers and their lives? And then fundamentally, the second question was, what should HSBC be doing about it? So Carly, Elliot, the insight team that we work with over there, they were getting a huge amount of information from lots of different agencies, almost daily reports, market reports, data trends, all about the cost of living. And they reached the point where they were, to be honest, they were quite overwhelmed. And this was their word, not mine. They got to the point where they knew it was a big topic. They knew they had these 2 simple questions, but they were struggling to answer those 2 questions. So that's when they they turned to me and asked me to help them. Can we skip that? So I'd worked with the bank a few times in the past. So twice during the COVID pandemic, and once looking at future trends. But in every instance, we were taking a lot of information that they had and synthesizing it into quite a neat sort of pithy report. I mean, we tried to stick to about 10 slides just to say, this is really what's going on. These are the big issues you need to be thinking about, and these are the implications for your organization. So we approached this in a similar way, in the sense that, we took that large amount of information, we sort of, we produced this report. But for them, when I approached them with the idea of doing this, they said that the timing was kind of perfect. They'd reached that point where they were, as I said, overwhelmed. They were struggling to digest all the information. They said, actually, we want something like what you've done for us before, something that brings all this together and makes it coherent for us. Thanks, Dan. So as I said, we had a huge amount of research and big challenge for, to be honest, a lot of the work that I do, because I'm looking at big topics and there's always a large amount of research. So we had to structure this, we had to understand this, we had to pull out the insight. So I've got a sort of 4-stage process that I go through. I won't go through it here. I've done ICG webinars on that before, so go back and check the library if you're interested. But how did we deal with all of this information? So we had, I think it was like 27 different reports from lots of different organizations, some really meaty ones. We had things from the sort of House of Commons library, we had things from the OBR, we had their own internal research, lots of future trends analysis, those sorts of things. So here we use Mural to pick out the key insights. So on each of these boxes is effectively the insight fully referenced back to a page in a report. I've put in a few charts as well, and you can see how we started to theme what we were hearing. So we were hearing a lot about consumer confidence and attitudes to the cost of living. HSBC are interested in their different product areas, so a lot about mortgages and housing, savings, debt, their expectations for brands. So what do consumers want to be hearing from brands around the cost of living and inflation? And then where it's headed in the future. There's a lot about that, and that's quite useful to a large organization that doesn't always move that quickly. Actually, we need to be ahead, so we need to be thinking about the future. So each of the different colored boxes there are really the implications. So we would digest all of this insight, we would discuss it with HSBC, and then together we collaborate on what this really means for the organization. So, it's the best kind of insight in the sense that you say, this is interesting, but it's not just interesting, it's interesting because this is what you should do about it. So it's always asking that so what. This was really useful as a starting point to discuss with HSBC, because as you can see, there's a lot of insights, a lot of research, but it was also apparent where we had gaps. So small businesses was a big gap in our insights. So loads on consumers. HSBC are interested in supporting small businesses as well. Didn't have any research on that. So then I went away, did a bit of my own desk research just to plug that gap for them. So it's a nice sort of simple visual way of showing you how much you've got, and in some cases where you haven't got any insight, and then you can go away and address that. So we produced a short report, as we had done for them in the past. We structured it around 6 themes. I can't show you the report, it's commercially sensitive, and HSBC protect their IP rigorously. So I can give you a kind of an example of what we did in the report. So we structured it by each of these 6 themes. Each had effectively a central insight and an implication for HSBC. So consumer confidence and attitudes, I don't think it's hugely contentious, but cost of living was affecting certain groups more than others. So it was affecting people on low incomes, minorities and middle-aged families particularly. All of the evidence suggested that it was likely to continue this year and into next year. as well. So our advice to the bank was really these are the key groups that are struggling most. All the evidence is this is going to carry on for a sustained period. So in terms of what you're doing for these people, you need to be thinking about this in terms of long-term support, long-term education programs. You need to be thinking about communication over an extended period. So it's not going to be this is over by March. You need to be thinking much longer term in this. So our third challenge was that we needed to engage stakeholders. So we had this PowerPoint report. That was the kind of foundation for the video, but it certainly wasn't just turning a PowerPoint into an animation. We wanted to do more with that. We wanted to really kind of land something. At the time, I'd seen Seaspiracy. I don't know if any of you have seen it. I think it's a really, really good documentary. I mean, the data used in it has been picked apart since, but that's not really what this is about. This is about how you take data and how you really bring it to life. And they were using really fantastic things, like rather than just talking about fish stocks being depleted, they would show that in a bar chart, but the bar chart would be made up of fish, and it would sort of appear on screen gradually. So it's just a really, really good way, I think, of bringing data to life. What they also did is they mixed this with the individual stories of the people working in the fishing industry, the people affected by this sector. So it was kind of fusing those two worlds of hard data and then real life stories. So having seen that, I thought, I'm sure we could do something similar. Not with Netflix's budget, unfortunately, but I'm sure we could do something here. So I put a call out to the ICG, and I'll let Dan take over the story from here.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so basically this was the message on the side there that Dan put out in the ICG, and I replied, and we had a call about essentially this. I think at that point, it was still an idea for a project. It wasn't even signed off. It was still at a really early stage, but it was essentially, could we do something like this? We spoke about this Seaspiracy documentary, but also Netflix's Explained, which is made by Vox. I'm like a huge fan of Vox. They've got a really great YouTube channel. It's an absolute goldmine of insight and cool digestible movies that explain data and trends and news. Their whole shtick is very much like, we make the news understandable. And I think as researchers, we're always investigating, we're digging around for that knowledge and showcasing that to our clients. So there's a real overlap of these skills in journalism. And I think explainer videos are massively trending in this space. You may recognize, just put a little picture on there, Ross Atkins. He does a lot of explainers on the BBC. You sometimes see them on like YouTube shorts and things like that. He distills the need to know info on a topic. And, our clients are consuming, content like this in their daily lives. So there's not only an understanding of the format, but a growing expectation to find innovative ways to present data in these recognizable and digestible formats. So essentially, yeah, the idea was, can we make an explainer for our market research project? Yes, challenge accepted. So once HSBC kind of signed off on the project, we started going through Dan's report. And essentially I said to him, I was like, we need to find the elevator pitch of each kind of slide. And we went through that. There was a lot of back and forth. And a big light bulb moment, as Dan kind of touched on there, was when we were having these discussions, was I kind of said to him, it'd be really good if we had some qual in this, some Vox Pops or something like that. So I put the idea to him that maybe if we could go online and essentially find some news footage that we could use almost as sources, as video sources. So we could offset that real data with the real stories. So we were able to deliver something for the client that was, a perfect balance of the two for a really cost-effective price as well. As I say, as you can imagine, there's a lot of collaboration here. It wasn't, Dan do the report, I did the video. It was very collaborative, lots of back and forth between the research and the storyboard. but I think we created a compelling video that gave a contextual, big picture overview of the topic, but also some really emotive stories. We can't obviously show the whole video. It's quite long and also commercially sensitive, but we can show a little example for you right now. So here we go.
In all the years that we've been here, we've never seen it this bad. We're getting a lot of complaints because every time we order stock, we have to put the prices up, unfortunately, and everybody's feeling it. Yeah.
It's the poorest people who'll be hardest hit because they have to spend a greater proportion of their household income on energy, food and drink. Under the current rate, those on the lowest household incomes are experiencing inflation of nearly 11%. The richest fifth are facing an 8.5% rate. But by October, that gap may widen even further, with the poorest fifth facing a rate of nearly 18%, compared to the richest, who'll face an 11% rate.
There we go. Okay, I'll hand back over to Dan now.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. So hopefully that gave you an idea. I mean, we can't show you the whole video. We've had to remove a lot of content that was either HSBC's proprietary data or based on sort of subscription contracts. So that's a fairly sort of light version of what the final video was. But hopefully that gave you an idea of how we structured it, the sort of style. So it was all obviously really nicely paced, I think. We even use, you probably heard the music in the background, so that is HSBC's own Sonic brand, written for them by Jean-Michel Jarre, no less. But that just really helped them to actually sell it in internally because it looked really familiar. Dan used all of the the fonts and the graphics from their brand, all of the colors. So it really worked in the company, sort of slotted in really nicely. So as I said, we're going to talk through the different challenges. So the fourth challenge here was about impact. So did we deliver on this impact? I think we did. I think the format got it noticed. So it stood out from all of the other pieces of insight that they were dealing with at the time, all of the PowerPoint that was circulating. So just by its very nature being a video, it stood out. I think really helped by Dan's suggestion of including the stories. And the gentleman that you can see on the screen here, he interviewed by Channel 4 News. He was telling the story of his wife, and his wife would, in their home, go to the cupboard, there'd be nothing in the cupboard. He would see her reaction to that empty cupboard, that empty fridge, and that would upset him, and he actually broke down in tears during the interview. And that was the story that really stuck with HSBC. And I think it's quite telling, isn't it? They say that that classic saying from Le Carre about viewing the world from a desk, but I think a lot of people working for large organizations, they can hear, okay, cost of living particularly affecting those on the lowest incomes, food banks are on the rise, and we can show them lots of statistics, but then they actually see the users of food bank, and it's probably fair to say that most people working for HSBC have not visited food banks and probably aren't familiar with the people that use them. So that one story really stuck with people. It really added emotion to the whole thing. It was very vivid. It was really helped, I think, by the topics that we were covering. So they're incredibly broad. They could apply to every part of the organization. So if you work in the mortgage and housing team, you could see what it meant for your home loan products and what you need to be thinking about. If you're in the innovation team, you can see sort of new opportunities potentially to address changing customer needs. If you worked in marketing, branding, comms, then you can start to see the customer segments that you need to prioritize and how you need to prioritize them. So its breadth was really, really helpful. And it was debated a lot, and how it was used. HSBC had various cost of living working groups, and they often started with this video just as a sort of baseline of understanding. This is what's going on. And then we had each of the 6 pillars, and actually each of those 6 pillars were then taken on, and they became their own working groups, and they had action plans against them. So really this was the foundation of a lot of really good work by HSBC to consider customers, to consider how the cost of living is affecting their customers and how they respond. So yeah, all the feedback that we've had from HSBC has been really, really positive. They've been very supportive of us sharing what we can with you and lots of other audiences, and we're really pleased with the outcome. So why was it a success? Why do we think this worked? So I think partly it's collaboration. So I'm the synthesis expert, Dan's the video expert, and HSBC are the HSBC experts, and we all worked together. We all collaborated. It wasn't just one person disappearing off into a dark room and coming back with something. We worked together. When I was going through my synthesis, I was engaging with Carly and Elliot and sharing what I was finding, what it meant for them as an organization. Me and Dan were collaborating on the video. And then, when it was in a good form, collaborating with it with Carly on the HSBC side, just to make sure that it was a really, really tight, really, really powerful output. And I think that worked. Secondly, it was the innovative approach. So taking this sort of Netflix type approach. I mean, Netflix, they know how to create engaging content. So I think we were right to follow their lead. And some of Dan's ideas, I think, were brilliant and really brought it to life, particularly interweaving the news footage. And you'll see from the video the animation that Channel 4 News used of showing who was affected most by cost of living, and actually people on lower incomes effectively had a higher inflation rate than those on higher incomes. We had that data already, and I had it in my report as a chart, but actually they'd already animated it. So let's use their animation, much more engaging than another dry chart. And then it was really, I think it was its impact. So being used in these planning meetings, being used in working groups, action plans happening off the back of the 6 things that we said they needed to worry about. Harder to ignore this video, and for example, the story of the man using the food bank, than it is to ignore just a straight PowerPoint chart. And as I said, just the breadth meant that it could reach all the different parts of the bank that were possible to reach, and that I think made it have impact. So thank you very much. We've kept time amazingly. So has anybody got any comments, questions?
That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much to both Dans. I have, unless anybody's got their hand up, I can't see anybody with a hand.
Kevin's got his hand up.
Yes, go ahead, Kevin.
Hi, yeah, great. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great presentation, thank you. Did you need to get permission from like Channel 4 or any of the other people whose content you used?
Yeah, it's a good question. No, Dan, but it was all on YouTube, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think the thing is, a lot of this stuff is like it's on TV, and if you're using it in a research perspective, it comes under fair use. This stuff is copyrighted, obviously, but we sourced everything. We were very clear about, the sources at the bottom, like you would a chart or a graph. If we were doing something from like the OBS or something like that, that source had to go on there anyway. This is a visual source. It's the same kind of thing. As long as you're presenting it in that capacity, you're commenting on it, you're critiquing on it, it comes under fair use. So you're absolutely fine to use it.
Liz, I think you've got a question there.
Yeah, my question was identical actually, because I mean I found this was a really fascinating presentation, and I've yes, on 2 days ago I was involved in a big presentation of a synthesis of data for a client where we boiled down 27 pieces because they don't have the internal resource to actually join up the story themselves. But what we didn't have is we didn't have any video content. Now, this was a global study, predominantly B2B, but it just has given me all sorts of great ideas as to, well, given who the client is and what the topic is, which is about renewables, I'm sure we could have found some inspiring videos in YouTube, or relevant videos on YouTube, to bring what was, I mean, we did a 2-hour presentation and it was pretty heavy going, even with sort of nice quotes from people and talking over, but we could have made it much livelier. So thank you very much for this inspiration.
Yeah, you're welcome. Just a little comment to that. I think a big thing is the context that you show these things in. You know, if you're loading up YouTube and you're trying to show clients clips and things like that, it can be a bit clunky. I think what really works about this is that, you know, we cut together the best bits from these snippets. So it wasn't just a case of going, here's a 2-minute video from Channel 4. It was, here's a 10-second bit, here's another 10-second bit, here's another 5-second bit, stitch it all together and overlap it with some music. You know, we sort of, and like I said before about the fair use kind of thing, we reinterpreted it, we critiqued on it, and that is why we were able to, you know, use it in this context. And I think that it, you know, as Dan said, it had a big impact by having it in that really propelled kind of way.
No, it's really great. Thank you.
I think Inez put an interesting question in the chat. So how did you price this? Was it a fixed cost project, or did you agree something else? And what did you use to convince the client to go for this innovative way of working? So yeah, good questions there.
Yeah, really good questions. On the pricing side, I operate totally fixed cost. So I've done pieces of insight synthesis before several times, so I know roughly how long these things will take, and I can give a client a sort of fixed fair price. And I think, Dan, again, I don't want to speak for you, but I think, you know, given your experience in video work, you can appropriately give a fixed cost for that too. So we were both fixed costs for this, combined to the client. How did we convince them? I approached them first and said, I think with the cost of living, we could do something like a synthesis. I think we could take it further. I think we could do a video. I just gave them a few examples that Dan had shared with me of, I think one of them was a sort of Vox Explained. They'd also seen Seaspiracy, so they kind of got the basic concept. So it was a little bit of a leap of faith, I think, from their point of view. They hadn't done a huge amount of video work, but I think because of my long-standing trusted relationship with them, they were happy to take a bit of a risk. I think it would be harder if you went to a client cold with something like this, but I think they trusted me, and they saw Dan's great thinking in the sort of the proposal stage, I suppose, and they were happy to go with it.
Yeah, I was just going to say to that point, I think it's if you're going to try and convince a client to do a video, use as many visuals as you can, even if they have screen grabs from places. You know, clients like to see things, you know, like rather than trying to give them a bullet point list of why they should do a video. You know, I found loads of examples in other videos and sent them to Dan and said, we could have a chart that looks like this. We could have, you know, an animation that kind of does something like this in their branding, and sort of try to, you know, without doing loads of upfront work, just try to find some, you know, inspiration examples, essentially.
Okay, there's a follow-up question from Nick. Do you think HSBC will continue to use this approach going forward as a way to humanize their data?
I hope so. I don't know. I can't speak for them, but I hope they will. I mean, they were huge fans of the work. I think what they have said is that it needs to be the right sort of project. So I don't think you could do this approach for every single. I mean, it's possible, of course, to animate every single project, but is it worth the time? You need that big topic. You need something that you want to share more widely than maybe just the brand team, or it's a particularly key piece of research, and you really want to engage your stakeholders. So I think they will, but I can't speak for them.
Okay, so we just got another question from Kevin. So did you embed the video in your PowerPoint, or did you keep it separate when presenting it?
Well, it was, I mean, this was a link to Vimeo, wasn't it, Dan? I think so. It's embedded effectively. Yeah.
The video is embedded in the PowerPoint, but then it's linked to a private video on Vimeo. I think a big thing when it comes to video is like security. And you know what I do is I use Vimeo, which is really secure. If you've got like a subscription for it, you can have private PowerPoint links, so you can embed it like you would a video. It's not taking up loads of space, but it's completely secure, unlike YouTube and things like that. So
yeah.
Okay. I have a question, Dan. How long did it take you, Dan PS, how long did it take you to source the videos? Is it quite a lengthy job trawling through different YouTube videos to find something that's suitable, or was it fairly
I think it's like any kind of desk research. It's a bit of how long's a piece of string. However, at the same time, if you've got a really solid brief, and we're looking for something really specific, it's easy to hone in on what you're looking for. I use a lot of transcript kind of like searches and things like that. There's back end kind of ways you can look at the code in YouTube and find things like that are coming up in the subtitles to find things really quickly. But also, Dan gave me quite solid kind of sections of, it'd be really good if we had a clip here that said, once we decided that we were going down this road, it was very much like, we need a thing on small businesses. And it was like, right, okay, cool. And then I went and found the one of the lady in the shop. And so it was very much like, it wasn't just like cost of living video, go find. It was a targeted approach.
Okay, great. Any more questions from anyone? I think you've answered everybody's questions. I mean, I found that really interesting and inspiring. I'm sure it's something that people will think about potentially using in the future if the right sort of project comes up. I think it's right that HSBC said that it wouldn't be appropriate for all projects, but yeah, great. Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing with us. Unless there are any last minute questions from anyone? Don't think so. Okay, so thank you very much to Dan and Dan, and thank you to everybody for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again on a future webinar. Lucy's just showing her screen. Have you got a question, Lucy, before we sign off? We've still got a bit of time if you want. No. Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you. It's really inspiring, and I'm going to watch Seaspiracy now for sure.
Great stuff.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Dan and Dan.
Thank you. Thanks, Sally.
Right, see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.